All right, welcome. This is Jason Murphy and Rebel Dharma, and this is our regular Wednesday night. Glad you're here. Those of you online, those of you in the room. Have, the 3 days a year that it rains in Los Angeles. We're in one of those days. It's always kind of nice. Kind of nice for me. Mm. So I wanted to let you guys know I'm going to continue on with some of the discussions we've been having, kind of going through the Four Noble Truths. Uh, we're probably finish. I'll do a little bit of a recap for those of you who are just joining, and then um, we'll continue on with the second noble truth and maybe get into the third noble truth tonight. Yeah, and I was thinking about, well, is there anyone new to the group? I don't think so. Everyone's kind of been here. All right. I was thinking about actually sitting just in silence. Most of the meditations that we do here at this center and that I, lead are kind of geared towards beginners or people who have, don't have much meditation instruction. But yeah, I don't know about you, but when I first learned how to meditate, like there was no instruction. Yeah. And it actually drove me a little bit crazy because I was just left with the stark reality of my everyday mind, especially when I was 16, 17 years old. But if you've been here enough times, which all of you have, then you have some instructions and they're in there. And the main instruction that I often use is to relax, observe, allow. And this idea of, relaxing into each moment, relaxing into each breath, that when there's tension in the body or tension in the mind, we tend to not be able to really have insight. We're kind of struggling with ourselves. So this relaxing and then observing, and this is observing one, the breath or sound or sensations in the body, but then two, kind of observing our place in time and space. It's kind of a broader sense of observation. So we're not only observing the meditation object, but we're also and perhaps even observing the quality of the mind, not the granule, thousands of thoughts that are popping in and out, but the quality of the mind. What's the attitude of the mind, and just to kind of have a little broader sense of that, and then allowing thoughts and sounds and feelings and sensations to all arise and pass away. And so this to me is kind of the perfect Vipassana instruction. And so we'll sit for 30 minutes, and that's it. I'm going to ring a bell in the beginning and ring a bell at the end, and we'll all just kind of muddle along best we can. All right, so finding that posture that's workable, that's sustainable. And settling in. what I think I'd like to do now is just have you guys pair up and I don't know, maybe just share what you're aware of. What does that feel like something you guys want to do? No. Okay. Okay. So yeah, so we'll go into groups of two. So just turn towards and we'll just do a minute, just like maybe a minute or two each. Just, kind of what you noticed, what came up for you. Was there anything different with maybe without guidance, maybe on your own at home, maybe you sit with guidance, and so being in a group that, I mean, you sit in silence, so just that kind of thing. So Shannon will put you in a group, those of you online, and then yeah, just go in some dyads. All right, welcome back. All right, welcome back. So I guess we'll just kind of continue that. Does anyone want to share out to the whole group anything that came up? How was it? How was it to sit with silence? Was it easier? Was it harder? Was there something that you noticed? in relation to that? Anyone have anything they want to share about it?
I've done it quite a bit, so I enjoyed it.
Great. So yeah, so you enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, I feel like when I'm sitting on my own, it's, not really guided. I think that's fairly common. I mean, I think sometimes people use, I have on the Insight Timer, which is it's one of the first meditation apps actually that was created, probably, I don't know, 2008, 2009. And it was free. I knew the designers of the app. I think they've sold it two or three times now. But on the Insight Timer, they have a series of bells and clocks, and you could send, and you can do intermittent, and you could do ones with that have like a beginning bell, and then like a clack, or there's several different choices of sounds you can do. Maybe an intermittent, like I think I overheard Brian saying to use something that has like every 5 minutes it will ring the bell one time, which
So
is,
Frank,
what's that?
so Frank has that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's something that I often like to do, but I just figured we would just see what it's like to sit in silence. Yeah. So there are options to have some, just some kind of a reminder bell or something like that. But I think it's also good to, to learn to sit with no instruction. Yeah. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it, that you liked it. What about for others? Anyone else?
Telling him it was harder for me tonight just because I'm chewing on something in my brain and
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to quiet that down a
Uh-huh.
little bit. So I knew it would be a lot of that and a little bit of moments of quiet,
Uh-huh.
which are very nice. So just trying to make more of those moments. And I think the guided meditation kind of brings you back. Someone else brings you back instead of yourself,
Yes, right.
which I find a little easier right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it's a little bit of a different view. And yeah, there's no right or wrong way. And it is a little more challenging, when there's not, because we can get caught in whatever the story is that or the thoughts we're chasing, or the problem we're trying to solve or figure out, or, the fantasy that we're lost in, whatever it is. So just to be aware of that, and to meet that with compassion and care, kindness. Cool. Anyone from online that want to share anything or any questions about um, you know silent meditation practice or meditation practice in general?
Yeah, I got one.
Great.
What do you think of this idea that meditation can be dangerous for people?
Mm-hmm.
I just
Uh,
listened to this woman on a podcast. And I found it really, I'm personally concerned about it, but I got really irritated. I'm like, it's another thing that I like to do that might be problematic. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm going to repeat the question. This idea that, and it has been floating around probably 5 or 6 years, and then there's an older version, when meditation was first given or brought here to the States. One of the so the question was, what I think about this idea that meditation can be dangerous for people. Kind of twofold. One is, I think that it's not dangerous for people. I think that ultimately it's good. And it will, as we all know, bring up challenging things that we're not perhaps ready to deal with. Um, I think that there's a misunderstanding, and there has been since probably the 70s, that meditation is a feel-good practice that we all, and this is, there's this whole new age vibe around, and I'm not going to go too down on it, but whatever, ketamine infused meditation, sound healing, breath work, that is all about, or visualization, that's kind of transcendence, that's kind of all about transcendence. It's all about bliss. It's all about, uh, can I have and change and sustain some kind of a positive experience? Um, and that has its place. But that's not what the Buddha taught. What the Buddha taught is that this is a realm of suffering, and that we actually need to understand our suffering. And when we start to do some type of meditative practices, there can be like I kind of said in the beginning, like the first few times that I, learned how to meditate, it was the stark reality of my everyday mind, which was crazy. Like I was, like literally, like there was a part of my mind that was saying, like, you should just kill yourself. Like this is not a good, life for you. So the danger that people talk about and warn about is that there can be some uncovering. And the psychotherapeutic danger has been anyone that has severe and persistent mental illness should stay away from meditation. That's one of the things that's been around for probably 20 years. And I don't agree. I actually did my graduate study, my final project on studying severe and persistent mental illness and the implementation of compassion, loving kindness, and body scans. And I'm talking severely psychotic patients, and found it to be very helpful. They found it to be very helpful. So I think that as the understanding of meditation has increased, and there has been this joining of people such as myself, the of kind of Western psychological understanding and Eastern kind of spiritual contemplative practices, I feel like there's more there's a depth of understanding around how it can be applied. So that's that's like the other side of that. And I saw your hand, Christine. I'll get to you in a second. The other side of this that people say to me quite often in my practice, or just kind of when I'm just meeting people in general about meditation and stuff, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I can't do that." And sometimes I push back a little bit, and I'll say something like, "Well, it's challenging, but anyone can do it. Or maybe you just haven't found the right practice or the right teacher." Because this idea that, like I can't do it, to me, that's just a limiting core belief. Like that is a limiting belief of like, oh, I try and I can't meditate. I need to be busy. I have to, like, that's why I like yoga. I like exercising. I like running. I like doing, riding my bicycle, like all these different things. Okay, so then you're lopsided. You have one side of this kind of activity, but what about the stillness? Where and when are you still? Generally, the people that I talk to about this are highly anxious or have a lot of stress in their life. And so learning to sit in stillness, or sit with the discomfort can be extremely beneficial, not pleasant at first. But as we all know, during meditation, it's not always pleasant. And so it's this balance, right? And then people that maybe are, want to disengage. I mean, this is one of the things that the Buddha taught. He taught about the middle path, right? The middle path of the extremes of, let's say, the extremes of avoidance or the extremes of being so distracted, right? Or, from the typical kind of Buddhist perspective, the idea of hedonism, the extreme of hedonism, of constantly seeking pleasure, of being a desirous, pleasure-seeking, animal, versus the other extreme, which is to be like, let's say, a purist, like a Puritan, or like no pleasure is allowed, or like like an ascetic, which is what the Buddha went to both extremes. And I think many of us may go to both extremes. I often talk with people about the pendulum, that we're really kind of all on this pendulum of seeking pleasure and joy and happiness. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the extreme of it, of like no bad vibes, right? Like only good vibes, like that, to me, that's just not reality. And then the other extreme of either delving into hatred, or being locked into resentment, or these different extremes, finding this middle ground, right? This a little bit more space, not dead center. I think this is what we're trying to do here, and this is what the Buddha is explaining in the Four Noble Truths, right? How do we do this? How do we find the balance? So that's my thought about it. All right, and for people that I think that people can be unskilled in teaching meditation, and even unskilled in their own, have they actually utilized meditation to reach the depths of their own heart mind? And if the answer is no, then of course they're going to think it's not applicable, or it's scary, or it's dangerous. Having said that, I mean, I will also say that there were in my group, like when I was working with severe and persistent mental illness. I mean, I'm not going to get into the specifics of what the diagnoses were, but challenging, very challenging, kind of hard to function on a daily basis. It's very like delusional, psychotic, extreme situations, heavily medicated in some cases. It wasn't for everyone. There were some folks that would come, they would try it, and they couldn't. They were having too many, kind of positive symptoms on the psychotic realm, and they couldn't meditate. Yeah. My belief is that if they stabilized, and they were introduced, or perhaps tried another type of meditation, because I also taught Qigong to this group, and Qigong was widely effective because it is meditative movement, right? And it's not like sitting and watching the mind, right? So that can be an alternative to help calm the nervous system for some. Yeah. So that's my answer. Christine, you had a question? You had your hand up. Did I answer it, or?
I did. Well, I just was really like what you shared, that my experience previously with meditation was seeking that bliss experience.
Mhm.
But I was going to just say that during the silent meditation, I noticed that my mind was all over the place, but I was able to be more kind about bringing it back than if I was externally directed to bring it back. Like there's something about that external voice that brought more um, emotion around being coming back to center than if I did it myself. And that's just an observation.
That's a beautiful observation. What that tells me, based on what you're saying, is that your internal dialogue is, kinder, in a more natural way. And knowing a little bit that I know about you, that's probably been, a progression. Like it probably wasn't always that way, right? As is true for me when I was saying when I first was learning how to meditate, um, and I just, I just had so much bad advice from myself, this part of my mind that was really kind of caught in a negative bias, and negative self-view. And over the years, that has shifted. There's more kindness, more compassion, more care, and without rejecting that part. So this is kind of getting into the second noble truth. We were talking last week, and I read this quote, and I'll get into it a little bit more, but I actually want to follow up on what I was saying before. So I'm going to shift into talking about the Four Noble Truths, and let me just say the Four Noble Truths are the blueprint for pretty much all of the Buddhist teaching, the known as the first instruction, the first kind of talk that the Buddha gave, and is often described as setting the wheel of the Dharma in motion. And in other words, so he wanted people to understand and awaken in this first talk. And so he gave the whole teaching of the path to awakening. And it's often talked about like this. There was one senior monk by the name of Sariputta, and Sariputta has this pretty famous quote talking about the Four Noble Truths. Friends, just as the footprint of any living being that walks can be placed within the elephant's footprint, all the wholesome states of the Buddhist teachings can fit within the Four Noble Truths. And I just love that image, actually. And I've even tried to think, well, what about a rhinoceros, or what about no? The elephant is probably. I mean, I would agree. This is probably a 2,000-year-old teaching, but I don't think there's a bigger animal alive 2,000 years ago or today. And so, but like, oh, the pig and the all of the little footprints of all of the creatures can fit within, and that all of the teachings, all of the kind of minute teachings and delicate teachings, poetic teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, and later masters and teachers such as Ajahn Chah, or even in other traditions, all can be encapsulated within the Four Noble Truths. So what are the Four Noble Truths? The very clear and practical and pragmatic. There is suffering. And the implication there is that suffering should be understood. Like, we need to understand that there's suffering, not be in denial, not try to avoid, but understand suffering. And then the second noble truth is that there's a cause to this suffering. And what is this cause? Well, there's a little bit of a lengthy description, but the cause in essence is selfish, self-centered craving. Selfish and self-centered craving are what the Buddha also called tanha, craving, the unquenchable thirst. And then the third noble truth is that there there can be an end to suffering. So we can end in this very life our suffering. A cessation of suffering is possible, is kind of the way that it's described. A cessation of suffering is possible. And then the fourth noble truth, how might we end this suffering? How can we do that? The Four Noble Truths is that this is the path leading to the end of suffering. What is that path? So simply, the path is well, it breaks down into three groups, but one is right speech. So having absence of kind of falsehood and slander and harsh speech. The sila, this morality group, is the first kind of place of practice. And so that is right speech, right action, right livelihood, ultimately. I'm not going to might get deeper into that, but not today. And then, so we start from a place of like, okay, can I act in a way that is not causing suffering, right? Like, okay, there is suffering. I have experienced it. I'm maybe currently experiencing it. Can I learn to not spill this suffering out into the rest of the world? So it's not affecting others. And then in turn, some would say cleansing karma, or causing a shift by taking on this ethical integrity, or these principles. And then through that undertaking, we begin to meditate. And we have it backwards in this country. We have these apps, and people want to learn to meditate, and they're like, oh yeah, I want to get blissed out. Now, bliss is totally possible within meditation, but not all by itself, and usually not in the beginning. But it is possible to have sustained joy, peace, ease, the things that are kind of advertised. But the thing that I love about Buddhism is it's not false advertising. The Buddha started with, there is suffering. Suffering must be understood. And then at the very end is like, and this is the path to peace. Right? So after we begin to act in a way that is non-harming towards self and others, then the Buddha instructs meditation. There's also a little piece there about generosity. So this is known as the concentration group, where the mindfulness and right effort and right concentration are part of the second group. And then the third, the outcome, is wisdom. And what is the wisdom group, or panya, is knowledge of the true nature of life, understanding the Four Noble Truths. This is considered wise understanding. There's also a piece there about karma, right? Understanding karma and the implications of karma, understanding the Dharma and the nuances of the teachings of all the little footprints. But that doesn't come in the beginning, and I say this often. Sometimes we get so caught in the why, like why does the sun rise to the east? Like why are all these things happening? We get so caught. Why do I suffer? Why is there suffering? We get so caught into the why that we miss the how, like how we can actually end it. And the Buddha is really trying to support us to, and the Buddhist teachings are really trying to support us to have this wise understanding. Right? From the very beginning, there's one way of looking at the Eightfold Path, and it's often described as the spokes on the wheel. And there's 8 spokes, and it begins with wise understanding, and it ends with wise understanding. So that's the kind of the idea, is that we continue this ethical, meditative, contemplative practice that leads to wise understanding, and then that understanding deepens, and as it deepens, then we become more liberated. And ultimately, what does freedom from suffering mean? So, free from ill will, free from attachment, greed, free from delusion, so seeing clearly, not holding hate in our heart, not holding resentment, not hating ourselves, not hating others, and being basically free from addiction, you could say, or free from the bondage of greed. To me, addiction is absolutely about greed, and it's also avoidance, right? It's also an avoidance strategy. All right, so that's my kind of, this is the Four Noble Truths. And now I'm going to get a little bit into, I'm going to finish up talking about the Second Noble Truth, but I'm going to go ahead and read the Ajahn Amro's translation of this Second Noble Truth. I talked about it last week when I talked about let go, let be, let in. So here it is. This, monks, is the noble truth of the cause of suffering. It is that craving, compelling, intoxicating, which causes us to be born into things again and again, ever seeking fresh delight, now here, now there. It is namely the craving for sensual delight, the craving to be something, and the craving to feel nothing. And so we talked quite a bit last week about this idea of kind of these three aspects, the kinds of desire, this idea, we think we ended up with this kind of idea of becoming. So there's a few different pieces to that quote, that teaching. And so it's basically this attachment to tanha, craving to have things be other than they are, which generally means pleasant. I want things to be pleasant, and I want them to be pleasant all the time. And that this is a delusion. This is kind of that, no bad vibes. Which, of course, it's nice when there's no bad vibes, but to but I think this attachment to there has to be no bad vibes, no bad days. Why aren't you happy? Why can't you just be happy? That's delusion, because we're not happy all the time. And so when I think I was talking, maybe it was last week or the week before, about, like this time of year and how it can be very challenging for some people. And then other people really take on this, lights and joy and, these kind of qualities. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's beautiful. We need that in the world. And I think also to make room for that, there are people who are suffering, more so. Isolation, separation, family, gifts, not gifts, loneliness. There's so many, depression, just the darkness, the cold. And that it's part of this pendulum. There's room for both. So this getting caught in sensual pleasure, seeking sensual pleasures as a delight, a new delight, now here, now there, right? That sounds like addiction to me, There's this thing I used to say, like when people would say, "Oh, well, what were you addicted to?" I was addicted to more, you know, more of what you have that I don't have, or even if I did have it, I wanted more of it, right? This kind of constantly leaning into the pleasurable experience. And this can be true across the board, right? All kinds of sensual pleasure can be addictive. And that's, and the Buddha is saying, like, yeah, and that's just the way things are here. And so if we don't recognize it, it's going to run wild. I don't know about you, but that was definitely true. I didn't really recognize it. I kind of did towards the end, but I didn't care. I still wanted just pleasure coming. I wanted bliss. I wanted to check out. I had, that there was this, the comfortably numb, want to be sedated. So then there's becoming. And it's this kind of ambition, this attainment. And, we're out of fucking control with this too, right? I mean, this is basically the reason that there's a capitalist society, the way that it is here in the States. If I only had, whatever. I was shopping for iPhones today, so I'll use that. If I only had the number 15, the newest iPhone, a battery, I mean, then my life would be easier, right? That's what they were trying to sell me. And I was kind of like, well, I could probably just get away with the 13, do I need the newest one? But I probably will get the newest one. But this, if I only had that, or this attainment, even like, a higher education or the right job, or if I start a business, or, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be successful. Then I won't suffer. From the Buddhist perspective, this causes suffering as well. The desire to become, and we get caught up striving to become. And there's a couple examples I was giving of this. I want to practice meditation so I can become free from pain. I want to become enlightened. I want to enjoy sense pleasures without having to give up anything and still become enlightened. So this kind of can be part of this becoming, to become uber spiritual. Right? So then there's the other side, this getting rid of. So there's this kind of becoming, there's this selfing that can come from this. And then there's the getting rid of, I want to get rid of my suffering. I want to get rid of my anger, my jealousy, my fear, my anxiety, my trauma. I want to get rid of it, cast it out. From a internal family systems model, this is disavowed parts. So if I take the fear that I experienced, let's say as a child, 10 years old, something like that, something happened, I had some internalized fear, and then I'm told to not be afraid. And in order to survive, I have to disregard that fear that was probably justified. Then that becomes a disavowed, or a part that becomes repressed. And so it's important to recognize that part of health, and this is the part where, back to Brian's question earlier, like meditation can be really challenging if you get into this, because what's going to be revealed is these disavowed parts. And just like when there's a certain time, like right when people are falling asleep and right when people are waking up, there's this magical time where this kind of subconscious and conscious are there's the permeated kind of boundary, and paying attention to what's happening there. Sometimes people talk to me a lot about having a really hard time falling asleep. and that when they start to fall asleep, they actually get more anxious, or there's something they've been pushing down all day. You know. So this idea of getting rid of, like, if I can just get rid of all of this, then I'll be okay. Then I'll be, happy. Instead of trying to get rid of, we're acknowledging it. This is what meditation is helping us to do. And there's this famous Ajahn Sumedho quote of saying, right now it's like this. So it's like this is the acknowledgement of what's happening, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, in our moment to moment awareness. And the Buddha basically is saying, and that's what we need to do. Can we be aware of what's happening within us and around us in any given moment, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and allow it to stay for a time and pass away? Now, that's the ideal. I want to talk about the practicality, is that it's not okay to do that all the time. We can't do that all the time. Like, there's a feeling that comes up, there's an anxiety, there's a fear, there's a depression, and if we let it out in that moment, or we allow it in that moment, it might not be the appropriate time. We're not in a safe space. It's not the appropriate moment. Frank and I, we've talked a little bit you've brought this kind of up, like when is the appropriate time, right? So what I'm not saying and is to deny it. Don't deny it. Like, we can't deny it. We've denied it long enough, But we get, of course, we want to get rid of something. I've experienced, quite a bit of grief. I was just talking to my sister's husband today. My sister died, mid-October. My sister was 56 years old. Yeah, super young. And she died, at home as best as could be expected. But I was talking with her husband today, and grief, sadness, and what I was appreciating is that he actually was allowing it. He was allowing it to come out, which is not something I expected from him, because he's kind of this, tough guy, cowboy. So there's this, can we be with what is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? And then the other side of this kind of getting rid of is, I have to get rid of or conquer all my desires, right? This is just another craving. Like this idea of I have to cut out, and we were talking a little bit earlier, like, I have to cut out all sugars, I have to cut out all meat, I have to cut out all animal products, I have to cut out, if I get rid of all of these, whatever the desires may be, sex, I have to give up sex completely. See, this is in the Buddhist teaching, but to me that's the one of the extremes. And what the Buddha describes to us is it's not about dispelling of desires, it's more about letting go of craving and recognizing desire as it is. I have desire for cheesecake. If I eat some of it, I might have craving. So to recognize the desire and then maybe not act on the desire. You can recognize it without having to act on it. So letting go of desires, it's a process of seeing things clearly and allowing it. And this is the thing, like, let's just go with the cheesecake thing for a minute. Like, is cheesecake going to make me happy? It might be pleasurable for a moment, Then there might be sugar crash. I might want more. I might eat the whole thing, half of it at least. I'm actually kind of prone to that. Cheesecakes aren't very big. They're kind of small. I can probably have quite a bit. It's cheese anyway. My mind will start coming up with all kinds of stories. It's a process. So we want to, let go of desire without rejecting or grasping. This is very challenging. It's very challenging to do. So it's helpful to not beat ourselves up for our desires or for our cravings. And this is what I feel like, even just this practice, I've talked about it many times, just the practice of sitting still and following the breath, or watching the breath, or just sitting still and trying to not move during meditation is huge. It's a training. It's a training in tolerance. Can I tolerate that which is unpleasant? Sitting still is unpleasant, in case you didn't know. And our bodies, because we seek pleasure instinctually, is constantly looking to move, to adjust, to, and learning to, with awareness, right? Not sit through extreme pain, but learning to tolerate discomfort. Is what the Buddha's teaching is about. Yet there's this other teaching that I really like. It's avoid avoidable suffering, right? So there's a cushion, right? There's a certain way you learn how to sit. Maybe sitting in a chair, maybe lying down, but still with the intention of allowing that there's going to be some discomfort, One of the things I love about the Buddhist teaching is that it's all here, that this release is possible, but that it's not easy. It takes work. And this isn't an intellectual understanding. This is experiential, And so when people say things to me like, "Oh, I can't meditate. I tried it once," and I was like, maybe try it again. Maybe come to a group, maybe go on a retreat, not a Goenka retreat. A lot of people actually, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Goenka, but there's these 10-day Vipassana boot camps that are free. They're donation only. So lots of people go because they're free. You could sign up, but they're like, you have to commit to stay, and they're kind of hardcore, right? So people get really, they're like hour-long sits, No, you can't sit in a chair. No, you can't lie down. No, you can't do yoga. And it's boot camp. If that's someone's first experience, would understand why they're like, oh, I can't meditate. But yeah, learning to deeper levels of stillness, So, let go, let be, let in. Letting go is this idea of, even just thinking about into the new year, like, what is it that we can let go of that's no longer serving us? Maybe setting thinking about the intention setting ceremony, or that's in this room on New Year's Eve. What is it that we want to let go of? And what in the realm of discomfort can we let be? Or, what can we put down? That's what letting be to me is, this putting down. What can we put down that is, like we think it's like the figuring out whatever it is, or the, that desire to be, wealthy, or have a relationship, or, I don't know, get the right job, whatever it is. And then let in, like, what do we want to invite that's really going to help us be free? Yeah, I think that's what I've got for today. It's 9 o'clock, so if you need to go, but we'll just end it there. I won't really open up for any questions, because it's 9 o'clock. A good group ends on time, starts on time, and ends on time. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Of course, know that